Alright, now we've covered the skills that will help you become a successful self-teaching guitarist. Let's talk about how to read tabs and chord charts. So first, tablature versus chord diagram and chord sheets. What are the differences? Tablature or tab is a form of musical notation specifically designed for guitar. It is the most detailed form of guitar notation. It tells you everything from which string, what fret, what technique, and all the embellishments. Now, chord diagram shows you how to play a chord, and chord sheet tells you when each chord is played within a song. Now, there are a lot of ways all three of them could overlap. Like, you may find a sheet music that has all three formats, or maybe just one. So it will throw off a lot of beginning players. But no worries, we're gonna cover all the conventions of guitar notations so you can read all formats, doesn't matter what you find online. But what about standard notations? Well, if you can read it already, great. If you cannot, then don't fret it, because you can 100% learn guitar without reading standard notations. In my opinion, as a musician that's learned to read both, I think tab is better for guitar learning, simply for the fact that it's easier. The barrier of entry to reading tab is literally non-existent. If you can read 1, 2, 3, you can read tab. Of course, that's not to say that tabs and diagrams don't have their own problems. One of the biggest problems of relying too much on tabs and diagrams is that it trains you to become a shape player. Sometimes I call it the shape player syndrome. I've suffered from that myself and I'm still trying to break out of it, but that is out of the scope of this video. At the end, the convenience and benefits largely outweighs the problems, especially when you're starting out. So naturally, tabs and diagrams are still the convention for guitar notation. Let's look at chord diagrams. How do you read it? It's super simple, really. It's a one-to-one to your guitar when it's sitting upright. 6 vertical lines, they're the strings. The horizontal lines, they're the frets. It's that simple. So left, right, you have your strings, E, A, B, G, B, E, and then the lines are the frets, just like that. Often on top of the diagram, you will see a thicker line or maybe double line sometimes. That just tells you that it's the top of the guitar neck. Now, when you see dots, that tells you where to put your finger. That's it. Now, if you see a bar that covers all 6 strings, then that is the infamous bar chord. And if you don't see a thicker line on top, but you see numbers on the side, that tells you the chord is played on the higher part of the neck. So just look at the number and find that fret, and then once again, find the dots. That's it. Now, regardless of the position, you will likely see circles and X's on top of the diagram. Circle means play open string, which just means you don't fret it. Don't touch the string and just plug it. X means you don't play that strings. You sometimes may have to actively mute the string, or sometimes you just skip it, just don't touch it. Now, majority of the diagram will just have those informations. Sometimes you might see optional notations like finger placements, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 is your index finger and so forth, and then middle finger, ring finger, and pinky. You might also see note name, which will tell you what note you're playing within that chord, and there's also note interval. R is for root, and you'll see 3rd, 5th, 6th, and so forth. Now, interval is a music theory concept that we won't be able to cover today. Alright, finally, what if you can't use a picture? Well, there's also written form. Once again, 6 digits represents the strings, left to right, E, A, B, G, B, E. The number is the fret once again, and 0 means open string, X means don't play the string. So 02200 is an E minor, X32010 will be a C major. By the way, welcome to the channel. This video is part of the playlist called The Ultimate Starter Guide for Guitarists. In this series of videos, I answer all the most frequently asked questions from people who want to learn guitar but don't know where to start. This part of the playlist is all about learning with a specific focus on self-teaching. Now, if you're brand new and you want to learn more about your gear like your guitar or your amp, or you just don't know which one to get, be sure to check out the previous section, which is all about equipment. Now, in addition to videos, I also have a written version of the guide, which is more in depth, and I have a whole bunch of gear recommendations there as well. If you find this information helpful, be sure to drop a like and subscribe to the channel and share this playlist with your guitarist friends. Now, with that out of the way, let's get back to the topic. Now let's look at chord sheet and chord chart. Like we said earlier, chord sheet tells you when to play the chord in the song, and chord chart is usually a collection of chords. Now there are many formats, so I'm not gonna spend the time to go through every single one of them or talk about the basic because it's pretty self-explanatory. What I did instead is link a very good Wikipedia article down in the web version of this guide. Be sure to check it out if you're interested. Instead, what I want to do is talk about how to use chord sheets effectively, because a lot of people, when they look at it, they just think that's what you need to do and they follow it to the T. That is not how you use chord sheets of any form effectively. What you really want to do is listen. Use it as a reference, as a guide, and listen to the music. If anything, go on to YouTube and watch how people play. That is gonna teach you way more than looking at a sheet music. Tip number 1 about using chord sheets effectively is it's totally okay to change the chords. It's not chemistry here. You won't blow things up just because you change something. Of course, that's when you need to really use your musical sense and determine whether or not what you're changing makes sense. If a bar chord is too hard, like the minor triad bar chord, then you can try a minor 7. This is what I teach my students all the time. And number 2, it's okay to skip some chords. You know, often the chord sheets will give you everything, including all of the transitional chords to capture the movement of a song. Like if you're having a hard time transitioning from chords to chords, then skip a few. Use your own judgment and see what could be skipped. It's okay to make those kind of changes. This is especially true if you're using a automated chord detection apps like Chordify or AutoChord, something like that. Those kind of apps or services will give you way more chords than you need to play the music. That's because it's literally detecting every single musical element from the song. So find the chords that covers the foundation of the songs and just target those chords and play like that. And finally, it's okay to change the strumming patterns. You don't have to play exactly the same as a record unless you want to play it exactly the same way or the song has a very specific vibe and you can't recreate that vibe unless you strum it that way. Then sure, but most of the time you can change up the strumming pattern and it will still deliver the same vibe. Alright, let's move on to tabs. When it comes to tabs, there are 2 formats. One is the sheet music style and the other is text-based. In the sheet music style, it tells you everything. You will see arrows pointing out to tell you to bend the notes. You will see acronyms like PM for palm muting, HO for hammer on, PO for pull off, PH for pinch harmonic and stuff like that. You will see diamond-shaped things. You will see waves. A lot of different symbols. Obviously in the text base you won't see those because it's limited to text only, so all those symbols will be replaced by letter instead. A B will indicate bend, but you will still see PM for palm mute and whatnot. So there are a lot of notations, a lot of legend, a lot of symbols, a lot of abbreviations to learn. Instead of going over all of them, once again, I've linked very good resources down in the web version. So if you want to learn all that, be sure to click on link in the description. So once again, rather than going through all the symbols and whatnot and overinflate this video, I want to talk about the importance of using a tab as a guide, because so many people, once again, just look at sheet music and they just think they have to do exactly what it says on it. That's not the case. The one unique thing about guitar is that the same musical phrase can be played in different positions, different ways, or even using different techniques. The technique sometimes can make a huge difference. And another thing that people need to understand is that the mass majority of the tabs out there are not created by the original composer. So most of the tabs you find online, they are an interpretation of the transcriber, basically just another guitar player. Now back before the internet days, before there's videos, all they could do is just slow down the record that they have and guess how it is played. So you will find a lot of tabs with what I call inaccuracies or inefficiencies. Alright, in order to demonstrate this point, I'm going to give you 2 licks as examples. One is going to be more exaggerated and the other one is actually from a real song, so you can see some real life scenario. And for both licks, I'm going to give you 2 variations of tabs so you can see how each tab interprets the same lick. So here's lick 1, and I'm going to play it from the program so you can hear if there's any difference. So as you can hear, there's virtually no difference. They pretty much sound identical. But now let's look at how each tab interprets the same lick. So I'm gonna play tab A, and this is how it interprets this lick. And here's tab B's interpretation. As you can see, tab A actually contains itself into the same place, and there's minimum movement. Whereas in tab B, you're seeing a lot of movement. In fact, I'm going from this 5 to all the way to 15 down here. And then there's this very stupid stretch over here. And not only that, after you're done using all your fingers, you still need to move up to reach this G note right here. It's just very inefficient. And then lastly, you still have this long travel to reach all that octave. Now when you're playing slow, maybe the difference is not that bad, but if you increase the tempo, then the difference is very pronounced. For example, tab B is not going to allow you to play at that speed. Maybe if someone practiced enough. Now let's look at lick 2. Here's tab A, the first interpretation. And here's tab B, the second interpretation. As you can see, the interpretations are very different. One uses alternate picking, one uses tapping, and you can hear the slight difference in there. Inherently, there's nothing wrong with either interpretation. But when you want to play the song at the intended tempo, the difference is drastic. And if you're into neoclassical or just classical music in general, you probably already recognize that song. That is the third movement from Moonlight Sonata. And the intended tempo is stupid fast. In fact, it sounds like this. Using alternate picking, it's just not gonna help you achieve that speed. So I've had students that will come to me with a tab and they feel defeated because they can't play this one lick that they've been practicing for weeks. And then I look at the tab and just like, it is tapped so inefficiently. After I change it up and then help them figure out a more efficient way to execute that phrase, they're able to learn it. Sometimes it's not used, sometimes the tab is just not tapped efficiently. And for those tabs, I never want to call them wrong because musically speaking, they are right. They got all the notes, they got all the phrases correct. It's just that it's tapped inefficiently, causing it to be a lot more difficult. Now finally, occasionally you'll also find tabs that is outrageously wrong. Like you may see negative numbers on your tab, that's likely just machine transcribed. If you find something like that, just find a new tab. Or better yet, look for videos online or listen to the original song. I'll say repeatedly, video or the original record will be your best guide. Use the tab as a reference. Let me say it one more time. Use your tab as a reference only. And finally, when it comes to using your tab efficiently, there's also a thing that you can do, which is simplify things. Once again, a lot of tabs will try to capture every single movement and details from a song. So all the subtle slides, all the quick hammer on, pulled off, all those embellishments, they will document all of that in there. When you're first starting out, it might be hard to include all of those little tiny movements. So skip all of them. Just play the song first, capture the main feeling first, and then as you progress, you can start adding those embellishments and try to make it play more musical from there. So that is everything about reading tabs. Let's move on to free learning resources.